and welcome to this episode of Mindset Mentoring for Athletes, Families, and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck, and this week we're going to be continuing our conversation and look at mindset and the mental health. In this case, we're going to be talking again about athletics and sports. In particular, we're going to be taking a look at tennis as Brian Boland will join us. So stay tuned for that.
Are you ready to elevate your success, whether you're a student, athlete, parent, or entrepreneur? Success Institutes offers transformational programs designed to unlock your full potential in every area of life. With webinars, masterclasses, and mindset training, we provide cutting-edge techniques to help you master your thinking. It's more than just knowledge. It's a life-changing transformation. Instead of paying thousands for a university course, our programs guide you in building the mental, emotional, and physical habits for true success and confidence. Starting with From Stuck to Unstoppable and Unchain Your Potential. We have something for everyone, including tools for families, like our Mindset Transformation Training and 10-Week Habits program. Plus, parents receive our book Confidence for Teens, a new chapter for family, free with just shipping and handling, to help guide their teens through personal growth. And whenever you enroll your family in any of our Mindset of a Champion training packages, you will get our bonus course on winning college scholarships, potentially saving you tens of thousands of dollars. Worried about time, cost, or even willpower? Our programs are designed to fit seamlessly into your life without overwhelming you. We help you prioritize effectively, leveraging the power of synergy and accountability partners to significantly boost follow-through and motivation, ensuring your team stays engaged. And compared to the cost of traditional education, what we offer is life-changing and far more affordable in the long run. If you're asking, will this really work for me? We believe it will. We even offer a satisfaction guarantee if you complete the program and aren't satisfied. Take the next step. Schedule your discovery call today, and let's unlock your full potential together.
Hi again, and today we are thrilled to welcome Coach Brian Boland to our program. Coach Boland has had an illustrious career in the collegiate tennis, highlighted by his transformative leadership as the former head coach of the University of Virginia men's tennis team. During his tenure from 2001 to 2017, he guided the Cavaliers to 4 NCAA National Team titles and maintained a historic 140-match winning streak in the ACC, crafting a legacy of resilience, teamwork, and excellence. Before his remarkable success at Virginia, Coach Boland served as the head coach at his alma mater, Indiana State University, and later brought his expertise to Baylor University. His commitment to developing young athletes extends beyond the college court, having also been instrumental in player development for the United States Tennis Association. He is now the owner of Boland College Tennis Placement, helping young tennis players find the right college tennis program. Boland College Tennis Placement has a 100% placement rate and provides premier guidance from a coach's perspective with decades of experience. Coach Brian Boland has also a strong network and personal connections with college coaches. These relationships were developed over 25 plus years of competition and camaraderie. Join us as Coach Boland shares his invaluable insights into building a winner's mindset, the importance of overcoming adversity, and the essential qualities of character and leadership that transcend sports. So welcome, Coach.
Morning, Chuck.
Good morning. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate having this opportunity to interview you. Tennis, well, I grew up playing tennis, and my dad was a college tennis player, and Uncle coached high school and played and all that. I haven't, I've kind of been out of this loop and be curious to kind of get some insights from somebody from a different sport. Baseball is kind of my sport, so this is going to be very good to get some different look and perspective.
Yeah, well, I look forward to sharing, and it's great to be on your show and have an opportunity to talk about something I love so much. So, and that's helping young people develop and become better leaders, and use tennis as a way to grow and deal with adversity, and do great things in the world.
Well, let's kind of start then with take a kind of look at what your experiences were as a high school and college athlete growing up, and how that may have shaped your philosophy when you got into coaching yourself, because some of the people listening might be high school athletes and all. Just kind of starting us at the beginning, so to speak, give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in the snowbanks of Minnesota, which is interesting because you think of tennis, probably the first thing that comes to mind isn't Minnesota. And interestingly, it was actually a good state to play tennis in. There's a number of indoor courts and opportunities, and it actually has a healthy tennis community. So when I was a young player, I got started through a coach by the name of late Jerry Sales, and he got me really interested in tennis. And my mom would take me from tournament to tournament around Northwest, and I just continued to grow interest in the game and loved competing and built great relationships and just absolutely fell in love with the process and what tennis could do for me and others. So, and I also, being from Minnesota, hockey was a big part of my life, and I think that's also helped develop me into a coach. I think playing more than one sport allows you to become a more well-rounded athlete, and you can really grow from taking parallels from the two different sports to kind of decide what it is you want to do and how one sport actually can help you in terms of what you do competing in another sport. It also gives you some reinforcement exactly what you want to do. So I think it's important when you're young to try a number of different things, which I did, and I was fortunate and had the blessings of my parents to support me. And tennis is what I ultimately decided to do and play in high school. I played multiple sports in high school, but when I went to college, I played tennis and wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I thought probably law school was going to be next for me after I finished high school, and I ended up becoming a head coach at a collegiate Division I program early on in my career at Indiana State University.
Very good. You did mention there this idea of playing multiple sports, and I've had a number of coaches say to me that is something that they encourage. They like to see really well-rounded athletes, but it also seems like that's something that it's kind of fading away. Have you kind of observed that? And is tennis, particularly when you look at some of the tennis stars who come in, they seem to come on so young that it seems like they must start specializing at a young age. Do you want to kind of talk about that idea of multiple sports and your perspective on that, not only as a coach, but now also as somebody who's helping tennis players get recruited?
Well, I think there's real advantages into playing multiple sports early on. I think one, there's always that burnout factor when you start at a young age and that's all you do and that's the only thing you know. It makes you wonder, what else was out there as you grow up in this country in particular, where you see a lot of football, baseball, basketball, and if you were able to kind of explore those opportunities and have an opportunity to play, which I did. I played some soccer as well all the way through high school, so I played soccer, hockey, and tennis. I think it reinforces what you ultimately want to do, and I think, and then the cross training to become a better athlete. Soccer makes you a better athlete. There's the endurance factor, the movement, and then of course hockey is a highly skilled sport, and I think it teaches you a level of grit and toughness unlike anything else. So I do think those combinations are really helpful in you becoming a complete athlete. And I also think it just reinforces, what is it that I want to do? And tennis is one of those games that, yes, you do tend to start early. A lot of world-class players started holding a racket as early as they can walk. But there's exceptions to that. There's a lot of players, Yannick Sinner, who's been number one in the world, really didn't get serious about playing tennis full time till a little bit later in his life, and he was a skier. So he's a great athlete, and did other things as well until he found his passion for tennis and started focusing on that. So I think there's a number of ways to go about it, and I still encourage young people, to explore and to try some different things, so they're sure that it is what they want to do, and it reinforces as they go through those peaks and valleys, especially the valleys of playing a particular sport. And anytime you're trying to be great at something, you're going to go through the adversity of it. It gets you through those things, and that's what it is you want to do.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. So you got a Division I college coaching job fairly early, and at your alma mater, and then you went on to University of Virginia, and I think it was 2001 to 2017 or so. So you actually during that tenure, where you obviously had some tremendous success with the 4 national titles and 140 match winning streak. That seems pretty impressive to me in the ACC. But you also began, I'm guessing, to see some changes, and this is what I want to kind of get your input on a little bit. There's a book that came out fairly recently, The Anxiety Generation, and in that book by Jonathan Haidt, who's I think a New York University professor, but he's talking about around the time of the smartphone coming out, 2009, we began to see a real shift in some mental health issues with teenagers in general, but that would have been right around about your midpoint at University of Virginia. So
Right.
I'm just curious if you began to notice any changes in some of that, what I refer to the mindset aspect of kids coming in, and how you handled that, because you obviously had great success. So can you kind of give us a little insight whether you did see any changes and what your approach was to trying to develop that winning mindset?
Yeah, that's a really, really good topic, an important one, because I think all coaches today struggle with the distraction, that is out there, starting with the cell phone and the amount of time that teenagers spend on that device every day. And I really think at the end of the day, it starts with leadership, and it starts with the example that parents set for their children. Coaches, we are ultimately setting the example. And I've had my own struggles to stay off the cell phone, there's social media, there's so many things out there that are full of distraction, which ultimately destroys. I mean, if you want to be great at anything, you have to have an enormous amount of focus. And, the average teenager is spending 8.5, 9 hours a day on a mobile device, and what that does to their brain, and the negative effects, as well as, they're not really socializing, and relating to people, as they need to be successful. I mean, at the end of the day, life's all about relationship, and that's something that has really fallen off amongst teenagers. I mean, they can be sitting in the same room or at a restaurant, and they're texting each other across the table. That's certainly not something that we want to promote. So that was a big shift, and it was a shift for me too. There was I think 400 employees in the athletic department at Virginia, and I think I was one of the last one or two that went from a flip phone to an iPhone, because I didn't really want all my emails coming in and everything else. I was quite comfortable with just being able to text until I got back to my office, so then I could just focus on the next step. And it's a huge challenge. I think it's not the biggest challenge that coaches face today, or leaders or parents. It's certainly one of them. And, it's something that you had to take head on. So for me, it's all about leadership, leadership amongst the adults to set the example, and to make sure that there's certain standards and times in which we allow young people to use their devices when there's a job to be done. So, that's something that I put a lot of time into. I shifted from just kind of like, the things that we do when we coach and that we focus on, into really studying and understanding the importance of leadership. And what I always would talk to my guys about is everybody has to be a leader, because everybody has influence. As long as you have influence in this world, you need to be a leader, and that's everybody. So how you go about that is critical. So I spent a lot of time with my players, and I taught a class at the University of Virginia with Dean Scott Beardsley, who is the head of the Darden School of MBA program. the thing I focused on the most was learning to lead yourself, which is a challenge for all of us. It's a daily struggle. It's a daily challenge. Learning to lead your peers. And then how do you go about leading people that are in a hierarchy standpoint above you, whether it's parents, whether it's coaches, and so on. I mean, you're gonna motivate people to support you and help you and serve you, or you're gonna demotivate them with all your attitudes, your actions, your words. You either get better or worse in everything you do and say. So it's not just a struggle amongst teenagers, it's a struggle, it's a journey throughout life. And it's something that I'm trying to work on every single day and face those adversities and become the best leader I can be, so I can be my best self. And, one of the things I always would talk to my guys about is, tennis sometimes, I think it's the perfect kind of opportunity for young people to play on a college team, because it really is an example of what you have to do in life. You have to learn to go compete on your own, but you're accountable to a team. Same in many organizations in this country. You work in business, you work in law, whatever you may do, there's people that you're accountable to. But at the same time, you have to go out there and you have to compete on your own. And that's what makes tennis so unique and such an opportunity for these young people that end up playing on high school teams or go to playing collegiate tennis. I think it's a real example for what you're going to face in the real world. And so, I spent an enormous amount of time talking to my guys about leadership. And one of the things that's so important to understand is you need to lead from the heart, right? So if you're doing and saying things that fill your heart and soul with positivity, you feel better about yourself. You serve others, you consider others, you have empathy towards others, and you have those characteristics that are so critical to maximizing yourself and those around you. And so one of the things we always had were like team values: integrity, humility, faith, and we would live on those principles. And that's something that I reminded the guys of every single day. Is that in line with our team values? Is that an example of what we want to represent and what you committed to as a team? So all the teams I ever had, they pick between 5 and 7 values that we would live by throughout the year, and I would reinforce those all the time. And that's for the coaches and the rest of the staff as well. It's just too important of an opportunity to not be wasted when you're part of teams and an opportunity to better yourself and become that kind of leader where you're really influencing people and not only maximizing yourself, but maximizing everyone else around you. So I just loved working with teams. And here at Boland College Tennis Placement, I have a team of my own now. I've hired a number of people. Our staff is growing, and the team aspect of it, we just had a call this morning, is one of the things I really enjoy the most, is that you share ideas, you listen to others, and you work together to accomplish a common goal. And I think it's just amazing. I love it, and that's what I love doing throughout my career. And I think I became more and more serious about it, making leadership really the base of everything that we wanted to do within our program, making sure everybody became their best leader and best leader of themselves, best leader of their peers, and learning to also deal with coaches. I mean, look, coaches and parents in influential positions can easily be demotivated, and your job is to motivate people around you, whether they're above you, they're your peers or those that you lead. So that's something I spent a lot of time on. I think it really helped my players and filled their heart and soul with a lot of positivity, which made them feel better and play better.
Yeah, you said several things in there. Can't touch on all of them, but there's a couple things. And this whole idea of leadership, one of the programs that I offer is on leadership. And you said leading from the heart. And the idea that this program that I have talks about is just that, is love. And is when you shift your thinking to really think about the other person first. And, I do a little thought experiment, right? Like, if you think of somebody who's not kind, they're always envious, they're easily angered, they're impatient, they dishonor people, they keep record of wrongs, all these kind of things, or somebody who's kind and generous and protective, they've got your back, they got your back, they're hopeful, perseverant, all of those things. It's like, who do you want to play for, work for, have beside you? And it's always of somebody with that, the kind, the strong, the protecting your back, hopeful, perseverance, always that person. And those are the character traits that are really behind leadership, and sometimes I think too many, even speaking as a father, I had 4 kids of my own, and sometimes you look back and you go, I could have done better here, there. But that kind of goes to your point too about constantly trying to get better and improve. But we need to consciously and purposefully try to develop those traits. And there's a lot that goes into that. There's the belief systems and all of this. And I want to kind of now bring back to another point you said and kind of get your feedback here, because you also said that tennis, right? You're trying to build that leadership in these young people. And tennis, while a team sport, and you've got team goals, when you're out there, it is really individualistic. It's just individualistic. You've got doubles, right? But how did you try to get your athletes mentally prepared for that? I'm going against this person, but also be able to help pick up and support and help their teammates in this goal. Because while you may win, if your teammates aren't, doing it as well, you're not going to get that 140 match winning streak, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, can you talk about some specifics about any techniques that you did to try to get them to prepare? Is there, go ahead, just kind of.
Yeah, I think, Chuck, the most important thing is you really have to touch people's hearts. You have to, you have to make sure that you remind them on a daily basis, and we all need it throughout our lives. Why do I do what I do? What is my purpose? What is my mission? And what's really, really important to me? And it's easy to forget. We get caught up in this really busy world, and I've done it myself, where I got totally distracted and forgot about what was important. And ultimately, what's important is people and the people that you love. And for me, Chuck, I think it's so important for the athletes to be reminded over and over about the bigger picture, because what you want them to do is to feel good about themselves and to bring out the best in them. Because look, we all have characteristics that are dangerous. We're all jealous and envious, and we all are capable of not doing the right thing. So that's why it's really, really important that leadership comes in where we hold ourselves and each other accountable on a daily basis. It's so critical. So an example of that, I can remember we were up at the National Indoor Championships in Chicago. And John Gordon writes this in his book, The Power of Positive Team. He interviewed me and wrote about this in his book, and I think it's a powerful message. So our team seemed to be a little bit split up at that time, and one of the things I prided myself on were a lot of these concepts of having a team that loves each other the most and shares common values and holds each other accountable, and everybody, is accountable for everything they say and everything they do. And I felt that particular team was really struggling. And I think that was in probably 2015, I believe. And we had lost, which was unusual. We lost in the first round of the National Indoors up in Chicago. We'd won 6 of those national ITA championships throughout my career, which is the best 16 teams in the country early in February to come together and compete for a National Indoor Championship. And we lost our match, and a blizzard hit Chicago. So I thought, boy, we can't leave tomorrow. And so I brought the team together, and we came up and we had a team meeting. And a lot of my team meetings are about collaboration, sharing, being totally honest, authentic, transparent, being honest with yourself, being honest with others, doing everything you can to create an honest and open conversation. So I asked the guys, what's the most important thing to you in life? And, naturally, all of them raised their hand and said, God or my family. That was what mattered to them. And I think that's true for all of us. When we really think about what matters, our families are the most important things to us, and we lose sight of that. So what I did is I said, I asked one player to tell me then, And I said, so you guys are pretty close, right? Oh yeah, we're a really close team. That's not a problem. So I'd ask one of the players and say, I won't give the names, but I'll say, okay, look, Jack, why don't you tell me about Ben's family? How many brothers and sisters does he have? How did he grow up? What did he do? What do his parents do? And so on. And they knew absolutely nothing. So you consider yourself close to one another, but you don't really understand what matters the most to this so-called best friend and teammate, right? And so you're missing the boat. So what I did, and it was quite an interesting exercise, I said, okay, what we're going to do is when we get back, I'm going to have every player grab a name out of this hat, and you're going to interview you're going to tell the other person's life story. You're going to interview their grandparents, their parents. You're going to make phone calls. You're going to talk about how they grew up, what was important to them, other things they did, other hobbies they have, who their siblings are, what they do, what's important to them, and so on. So we did that. And I can tell you, and I truly believe this, look, hitting balls and training and getting on the court and having great grit and working hard every day and doing those things that we all do are really important. But what's going to separate us? And I really felt this separated us for the rest of the year. Not only did we go on to win the 3 next national championships over the course of 3 years, but we didn't lose another match the rest of that year. And we were really struggling at that point. And I can tell you, I really believe that brought that team so close. There was a lot of these guys would come and they'd give presentations, show pictures of their teammates growing up and talk about their family and talk about what was important to them. We learned things that they did that we had no idea anything about, hobbies, musical instruments they played. And I'll tell you, that team became so close and really learned to understand each other and understand what this so-called best friend and teammate, what was important to them. And we don't take the time to do that. Again, this is a world that is so distracted. And we all get caught up in this rat race. And we don't stop and consider each other. We hardly take the time to really learn to understand ourselves at time. And that's the critical part of learning to lead yourself and become more self-aware. I'm not fully self-aware. I need other people to help me and be honest with me. And that's been a challenge for me because when you get in leadership positions and you're a head coach, people don't always want to tell you what you need to hear. They want to tell you what you want to hear. And that's why you have to open yourself up. You have to show vulnerability. You have to let them know you're no different than anybody else. Look, coaches are some of the most insecure people in the world, particularly, I think, in this country. And I say that because we're supposed to have the answer. And you know what? A lot of times we don't have the answer. We're human. We're just like anyone else. And your players need to know that, you are anxious. You are vulnerable. You are insecure. You need confidence as well. You need feedback. So I'd always have my guys, when we went through that process, we became so much closer. We learned to understand one another better. From staff to players, from players to staff, from players to players, and that really built us into a team, and I think it helped our culture throughout the rest of my career at Virginia, and I think our results speak to that, and I really think that was a difference.
Yeah, that piece about those relationships are so powerful, and as you said, it goes beyond the winning on the court or field. When you build that kind of relationship with somebody, those become lifelong friendships. And ultimately, there's a Harvard longitudinal study on happiness, and it's the quality of our relationships that matter most, right? So
yeah.
When you can help foster that in the way you did and all, it's a wonderful thing. And I totally agree with you that there would be no doubt in my mind that was a significant factor in the success that they had on the court.
Chuck, I'll tell you, just not to interject, but that leadership talk by Harvard, the longest study ever on human relations, what builds ultimate joy and happiness, I have showed to every team for probably over a decade. That's one of the first things I do every year is show that video. And you know what? Myself, I need reminders of that every day. Because again, this is not just a teenage thing or a young adult. This is a lifelong battle to continue to remind yourself, why am I here? What am I doing? And how can I make the world a little bit better place today? And so ultimately, people that have lifelong relationships and, they invest in those relationships and they get reminded of how important they are, because we can all lose sight of it. They live the happiest lives. There's just no doubt about it. And again, if you're not full of joy, if you don't believe that what you're doing has a really great purpose, you're not going to be very good at it. So I think a lot of times we lose sight of the bigger picture as coaches. We think if we just go out there and we feed this kid a million balls and we fix his technique or his movement, it's all going to be okay. And then a lot of times we'll say, well, if you just correct this with your game or your fundamentals or whatever you're working on, it's going to be okay. And underneath all that, underneath the surface, is a kid that's bothered by something, that is afraid to open up with what's really distracting them. And there's a lot more than ever. It's so hard to grow up in this world. You mentioned at the beginning of this podcast of, there's so many distractions, starting with the cell phone. And it's a hard, years and years ago, when you would go play in Europe, like, for example, people didn't know your results for a couple days, maybe in a couple days. Now they're watching it online. There's so much more pressure for young people today to perform and to kind of live up to all the things that distract them. So we as leaders, coaches, parents, it starts with us, because if we could set the tone, then they'll follow. And so it's just, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for us to reach the hearts of not only one another as adults, but to young people. And we need to be reminded of this every day. You get up every day, you say to yourself, look, how can I make the world a better place to live today? In my office at Baylor and Virginia, in the back, I had these big bold letters, and it said, to make the world a better place to live through tennis. Because for so long, I would win tennis matches as a coach. No doubt about it. But there had to have been more to it for me. And that's where I started to think, how can I really find deeper and more substantial joy in what I do? How do I know that I'm really on this planet to make a difference in better people's lives? And that really struck with me. And that's always been my mission. Like, tennis is a tool. Tennis is just, regardless of what you're doing. Right now, I help find kids colleges, and I work with them through the process and the developmental pathway. But it doesn't really matter what you're doing. That's just the tool. It's the interactions you have with people. It's, do you fill their hearts with positivity and things that allow them to become their best selves, or do you subtract from their day? And we have an opportunity in everything we do and say throughout every day. And that's where I feel like I really was able to get the most out of my players, is that they learn to reach into their hearts and feel better about themselves, okay, by the things that they would share with one another, to lift each other up and not tear each other down. And when there was someone on our team that was having character issues, and he would pull, you put a rope around the team, right? Let's just say you and I, we have a big circle, we put a rope, and everybody puts the rope up, right? And then you got somebody on that team that's pulling that rope down. If you have enough people that are just pulling and yanking that rope up, he's going to come up with you, right? So that's where I think it's so critical. And these young people come into these teams, and if these teams have great leaders and the culture is strong, it is such an opportunity for young people to become their best selves. And that's why when I talk about these different programs, and there's so many great coaches out there, the biggest thing for me is, who are these coaches as people? How do they lead? How do they reach the hearts of young people? What are they doing to build those principles on a daily basis? Do they hold their players accountable? So at the end of the day, and this is one of the most gratifying things, I've been to a couple weddings in the last 6 weeks, and to see all these former players, and we went out to Aspen, there were like 30 former players there. I went over to Richmond, Virginia, there was another 25 former players. The love in that room and what's been created is the greatest joy in my life. Yes, I love winning like everybody else, but what I'm talking about does win. And it wins in a lot more important thing than something on a court or a gym. It wins in life.
Yeah, I am 100% behind everything you said there. There are a couple things, as we talk, right? There's, it could go in so many different directions there, but that you mentioned again what I talked about with the cell phones and all that, and one of the things that comes out is this social comparison, right? So young people are looking at their phones and they're begin to be connected with other people. So you might be in the tennis world, and then you see somebody who's doing something phenomenal, and you go, and you begin to feel not as good about yourself because you see some report about somebody else doing something else, and you don't even know how accurate that is. But the social comparison, and also the negativity that's out there, it's just, this is old data. I haven't checked, what some of the more recent data is, but for every negative that you heard, you had to have like 3 to 5 positives to counteract it, right? So they are being bombarded much more with that negativity, the whole social comparison stuff, and it's applies to athletes too. Athletes, culturally, we think the athletes are the tough ones. They're the ones who are mentally tough. They're the mentally strong ones. And a lot of athletes believe that they're supposed to be, so they don't show it, right? They bury it, they hide it. It begins to manifest itself, and maybe the relationships begin to break down, grades begin to break down. They begin to self-medicate through drugs or alcohol or things like that. And there are a lot of NCAA numbers that indicate that athletes are struggling as much, if not more, than everybody else. So your whole conversation about trying to reach the heart and all that is like spot on, and getting to know yourself. That initial program, foundational program I offer is so much of that is trying to uncover these beliefs about who people are, about what they can or cannot accomplish, things that they've had buried, not the real obvious ones. And boy, I tell you, when I take them through processes of breaking those, wow, it can be profound. Just doing that, it can be totally profound. And I haven't even talked about building up the positive. That's just removing the negative.
Yeah. No doubt. That's why I think if you can coach these kids into having level 5 leaderships, level 5 relationships. Level 5 relationships are ones that are really close and open and honest, because you can't keep that stuff inside. And you have to have an environment and a culture that is about transparency and honesty and openness, whether it's in your team, in your organization, at home. And it's a lifelong journey. It's something that you have to continue to remind yourself that we all need, because to store that stuff inside and not be able to share it, we all have anxiety, right? Especially high performers. We all have insecurities. We all have, we need to show vulnerability. If we don't, everything just festers inside. But if we can kind of get those things out and be able to articulate them and get feedback and get feedback how we become more self-aware, how can we become the best version of ourselves? How can we, improve ourselves on a daily basis? You get an opportunity to become your best self and to be able to impact people in a positive way all the time. And so that's what's great about sport, though, is these opportunities are there. And, there's so much adversity in the walk through life. And so we have a great opportunity as coaches and teachers and parents to prepare young people to deal with the adversity, some of which you're going to be able to control and others of which you're not. Things happen to people in life. The one thing we know about life is there's no guarantees. Nothing is guaranteed on this earth. So you have to be as prepared as you can to deal with the peaks and valleys of life. And one of the things I always talk to the guys about, we had a lot of success on the court. And the adversity of success sometimes is harder than the adversity of failure. Because when you are the last team standing or the last individual on the top of the podium, a lot of people don't like what they see time and time again. So how do you deal with that pressure? How do you maintain the kind of consistency that you want to when it's a pretty lonely place? So I've dealt with a lot of players and teams over the years that we didn't just focus on dealing with adversity in terms of losing, but how do we embrace the adversity of winning? How do we stay humble? How do we stay true to ourselves? How do we show vulnerability to those that we need to so we can continue to learn about ourselves? This stuff is so important, and it starts with relationships and to be willing to constantly be looking to better yourself through honest and open, direct conversation. And look, I do it to this day. I mean, my journey's not over. I'm learning about myself every day. I'm 52 years old, and I have a lot to learn and a long ways to go. And that's what makes it exciting. That's fun. We want to make sure that we're continuing to find purpose, that we're continuing to do things where we can master a craft. Whether for me now, I've shifted to college tennis placement. I want to make sure that I know that it's an opportunity to get better every day. It's an opportunity to improve. It's an opportunity to learn. And then to have the autonomy to do it. I think if we're going to get the most out of people, we have to empower them so they have the freedom to be able to be creative and the time to be creative. So again, we can get so caught up in we want everything right now, okay? And with all the stresses and anxieties and the insecurities and the things that young people and even those of us who've lived longer have, we have to be part of a culture, an organization, a family, a group of people, okay, that brings out the best and really talks about these things and explores deeply in one another how we can get through it together. Because again, what is team? And this is what I love about team. Team equals together, everyone achieves more. I mean, it's just to be part of people, and who you surround yourself with is ultimately who you become. So that's a continual battle. It's something that we need to continue to strive, and the opportunity that we have. And that's where I love working with young people at the vulnerable ages, as they leave home and go to college and they prepare to go to college. It is such an important time of their lives. It becomes, I used to tell guys, they say, well, this is just the best 4 years. I'm just supposed to have fun. And I said, no. Like, trust me, the habits you develop now will be with you for the rest of your lives. Okay, this is a critical time to grow, to learn, to explore, to get to know yourself, to learn how to relate to people. And if you spend your whole time just saying, I'm just going to have a big party and I'm going to do whatever I want, there's a pretty good chance those habits are going to be stuck with you in your 30s and 40s and 50s, and you may never get away from them. So we have a big responsibility for young people. And in order to be responsible for young people, we have to learn as adults to adapt and adjust to the time so we can relate to them. Like, we talk about, hey, don't use your cell phone, and we're staring at our cell phone all day. That's not going to fly. So again, we have to continue to check our egos and ourselves at the door too as leaders, and help each other. So it's a complex thing. It's really, really hard to do. But if we continue to remind ourselves every day the critical part of leadership and the opportunity we have and the responsibility we have, and to lead from the heart, then great things are going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to kind of shift gears slightly in that, we've talked a lot about your coaching and all. So you left the coaching to now kind of be a recruiter, and all this that we've been talking about. How do you like intertwine all that to help families? Because going from high school to college, I don't care whether you're an athlete or not, that's a big transition. Going from high school to college as an athlete, you're adding even a little bit more on the plate. Going to a real top like tennis program, there's going to be even more responsibilities. But whether it's Division 3, 2, 1, that's a big transition. And how do you go about trying to help mentor families in that process and find that right match, right? We're talking about all these factors and how important, the mindset, the mental health kind of aspects are. Can you talk about some of the things that you're looking for to try to help the families and make sure you got a pretty good record, 100% placement? Can you talk about what some of those things are and how you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, it's going to go back to the same thing. It's about relationship, right? To ask a lot of questions. I want to get to know the individual, and I want to make sure that I understand what their priorities are, what's important to them, who they are as a person, how they grew up, what their tendencies are. So I spent a lot of time in the initial consultation just asking a lot of questions, taking a lot of inventory, and really, really trying to understand the individual I'm working with. Because I feel really, really responsible to make sure that where they go, it's a win-win. It's not just a win for the player. We could go in and get as big a scholarship as they can, and they're all happy and we check the box. No, it's a marriage, Like, one of the problems today is we have this attitude that if we go to a school, all right, and it doesn't work out, we'll just leave. I have kids tell me in this process, well, if it doesn't work, I'll just transfer. That's really not what you want to view things as. Like, you want to go into a college campus with 2 feet on the ground. You want to invest in relationships. You want to invest in your team. You want to invest in the university. You want to make sure that before you're going there, you've gone through a proper process of understanding why it is that that's a good match. When you get married, well, nowadays we just go through a drive-through. sometimes. But at the end of the day, we've got to really make sure that we give ourselves the best opportunity for success. And when I look at someone choosing a university, which is ultimately one of the biggest decisions that a young person will ever make, because it's often where you meet your spouse, where you meet your best friends for life, a place that you want to be able to come back to and enjoy alumni weekends and have lifelong friends. Many people move back to the community to support their local college that they played at or that they went to school there or whatever. So this stuff is so important. I want them to find that perfect marriage. And I don't want them to go in with the attitude as well, if it works out fine, and if it doesn't, we'll just move on to the next one. And that's a little bit of a cultural problem we have today. It's just, if it doesn't work, just quit. If I don't get enough playing time, I'll just transfer and complain. And you got 20 people telling the student athlete, get out of there because it's hard. No, that's not what we want to build in people. We want to build that you start something, you finish it. That when you go into it, you're prepared. You've done your homework. You've given yourself the best chance for success. And when things don't go your way, you learn to take them head on and deal with it. I just went through the process with two of my sons. One of them played football at Baylor and just graduated and had a great experience. And then the other one is now at the University of Arkansas as a freshman tennis player. And I wouldn't want them to go in there with this, like, one foot in the door and think, well, if it works out, it does. And if it doesn't, I can just leave. And if I have challenges, I'll just turn my back and leave. No, there is a time and place where people do need to transfer for good reason. There's just some things that happen that it isn't in their best interest to stay at a particular school. But in most cases, we want to make sure we get it right on the front end. And to me, it's a relationship. It's like, when you build a relationship, when you marry someone, you're going to go through some really, really tough times. And that's just the journey of life. And so, we've got to face, regardless of how challenging it is, we hang in there. When you go to a college and you choose it, you want to hang in there. You want them to be prepared for that process and give them the best chance for success that will meet the things that are important to them. So the priorities have to line up. Whatever that young the prospective student athletes, their priorities have to match up with the university in which they ultimately choose, the style of the coach, the demands of the program, the academic demands, the culture, the geographic area. A lot of kids are more successful if they stay within 3 hours of home. And for other kids that are a little bit different, they can go somewhere a little further and have just as much or more success. So those are the kinds of things that I have to dig deeply into. So I really, really understand the person first that I'm working with, the family, and what's really important to them, and do a lot of listening and a lot of asking of questions so I can help place them, ultimately they decide, in a place that gives them the best chance for a successful marriage.
Yeah, that's just good coaching. That's good. We as a culture, I don't know if we listen well. And, I know that's, I'll be the first to admit that's been a challenge of mine, right? For a long time. Then get better at it because willing to work at it. But yeah, getting, you'd mentioned too that the whole talk about trying to get it right that first time. And, I wasn't a college athlete. I made a decision after my freshman year that I wasn't going to pursue baseball any further because, well, my grades weren't so good. And I said, all right, other things, I just need to make a decision. At best, I would have probably been a role player and just decided to make that move. But I ended up transferring for my own reasons. But I just had this conversation with another college recruiter about the transfer and the portal and all this, and my son, who was a baseball player, he played one summer in a very competitive AAU team, and one of the guys on that team went to a D1 school, then transferred again, then transferred again, and I think it was 5 schools in 5 years. And to me, that's a problem.
It is.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say to you, your point, you want to try to get it right once because all those transfers are new transitions, and transitions create stress that aren't necessary, and it's harder to build real good relationships when you aren't
There
there
you
all
go.
the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all those things.
Well, if you think about it, what ultimately does, we said this at the beginning of the podcast, what makes somebody find the most joyful life? It's relationships, right? So what are we teaching young people now? I mean, just go on the transfer portal if something gets tough. Just go into this decision, and if it doesn't work out, you just transfer, and then you transfer again, and you don't face the challenges. I can't speak for Tony Bennett, the former basketball coach who just stepped down at Virginia, but I think he's one of the most incredible leaders that collegiate sports has ever had, and it's a big loss for college sports. I think Tony did get frustrated with the process and the climate of today's collegiate sports. The culture, the attitude of, if I don't get enough time, if I have to, he's a very defensive minded guy. If I have to play a style I don't like, or, it's uncomfortable for me, I'll just go to the next school. I'll just go on to the next school. And then you never really sustain anything. You don't have long-term relationships, which ultimately is what leads people to be joyful and happy. And you don't learn to deal with difficult situations, because every time it gets tough, you just turn your back and run away. Yeah. And, we are just a culture that promotes comfort and the easy way out as fast as we can get there. And that's not young people's fault. That's our fault. Yeah. We tend to say, well, young people today, they do this and they don't do this. No. It's on us. We're the ones who are the adults in the room. And believe me, I've made plenty of mistakes. I mean, I have 4 kids of my own, and it's really, really challenging. But it's a serious responsibility. And there have been times I failed. And I will continue to fail at times, but we have to embrace that stuff. And we got to hang in there, and we got to find a way to get better, and we need to improve. But we, as adults in the room, need to take responsibility. And Tony did his absolute best. And I can't speak for him. I've talked to him once since he stepped down, but at the end of the day, we don't want to lose people like Tony Bennett that are serving young people. He's one of the greatest minds of basketball, but more importantly, he's one of the best leaders of young people I've ever seen in my life. So that's a big loss that there's young people out there that have a fantastic opportunity to become great leaders, to be part of his program, and he's not coaching anymore. We don't want to drive those people out. And, it's a testament to where we're at today and the culture that we live in. And we've got to fight this off. We have to, as leaders, we need to challenge this and take it head on and be honest about it, because we're the ones failing, not the kids. We're failing the kids. So it's our responsibility. We need to look at ourselves in the mirror as adults and say, we need to do better. We need to be a better example. We need to make sure that these young people understand what's important. And the only way we can do that is do it ourselves. And it's a challenge, but we need to do it.
Yeah. That's kind of this mission that I'm on. And there's another book that's fairly recently, and it's right in line with something I've been talking about and kind of saying for a while, and that's the danger of comfort. And we are societally, and myself included, comfortable, right? And growth, personal growth, by definition, is about getting outside that comfort zone. And it's something that I've had to kind of face down too. And this whole journey now, becoming an entrepreneur is definitely pushing me outside my comfort zone. And it's important to build that into people's lives. For athletes, it's a great opportunity to help push people outside their comfort zone. It's a tremendous environment for doing that. But you see it even within the athletes, what you were just talking about with that. If it doesn't work out, I'll just transfer. Or you're never really willing to commit to something that might be hard. And all those things are trainable and coachable, and we need to purposefully and deliberately go after it. And that's kind of that's become part of my mission. We are kind of running out of time a little bit. I could probably talk with you for a long time. One last question for you, give you an opportunity to kind of talk to the parents that are out there, and any sort of advice that you would give them as they are trying to help guide their children. In this case, you're the tennis recruiter, right? So, what sort of advice would you give them in this process as they're trying to find, 75% of teenagers find high anxiety in this whole process.
Of course.
That's just the teenagers. I know parents have it too. So what sort of advice can you give them to kind of, as they're thinking about the whole college recruiting process and getting to the right school and helping their kid find their way?
I think you need to be another set of eyes and ears, but ultimately, the student athlete, prospective student athlete, needs to make the decision. And as close as you can get to that, I think the better, because ultimately they have to be responsible when they're there and take ownership of being there in their situation and who they chose. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't guide them and steer them through a lot of, questions that you get. Obviously, your child pretty well. So I think there's questions you can ask to steer them in the right direction. I think that's really important. But with that being said, I think the young person needs to believe they made the decision. And I say that because they're the ones who, on a day-to-day basis, when they're on that campus, there's going to be struggles. There's going to be peaks and valleys. Okay. And they have to be willing to take ownership of that and embrace that and be responsible for that. And even when they get on a college campus, nowadays you have parents so involved, and including moving to the place where the young person goes to college or talking to them on the phone 5 times a day. We need our young people to learn to deal courageously with their own problems. Like I always tell the players on my team, I love having a relationship with parents. Some of the best friends that I've ever had are parents of former players, but it was a friendship. It wasn't about, making decisions for the young person. Oftentimes when a parent would call me about something to do with anything that the young person could talk to me about, I would say, well, when you're working at a business someday, are you going to have your parents call the boss? But our job is to prepare them for life after college. And so we need to take that very seriously. So I think as they go through the process, you want to find a coach that, has the personality to get the most out of your child, and is someone that you believe that you can trust. And then an environment and an atmosphere and a culture that really does go in line with what the values are of the family, and for some people, it's faith is the number one reason they decide to go to a particular college, and that's great. And for others, they have a tiebreaker that I want to go to a smaller school, so my classes are smaller. That's a tiebreaker. They don't want to be in class with 500 students. There's nothing wrong with that either way. It's just kind of who are you and what do you want? So I think it's really important to really help by asking questions to your child. They are allowed to learn about themselves. So I think just learning to ask really hard questions and creating that dialogue with them, and then making sure that they feel like ultimately this is what they want to do, not what you want for them, but what they want to do. And I think you can get there through that process. And that's where I come in to help. I mean, I want the parents on these consultation calls. I do like to spend some time alone talking to the prospect, but I ask the parents to join the call because you can learn a lot from the parents, and the parents can learn a lot about the process from someone like me who spent my life in it. So, I want to kind of steer everybody in the same direction, but ultimately I think finding a way to make sure that it is the young person's decision. So when they're on campus, that they take ownership of the things that go well, but also the things that become struggles. So they'll take those things head on and not say, well, you made me go here, or you told me that this was the right person to be coached by, or this was the right program. No. We need to, again, it goes back to personal responsibility. We need to make sure people take responsibility for their own decisions, all of us.
Yep, that's, taking responsibility is that first stage in my process. And it's more than what a lot of people think sometimes. And I talk about the importance of taking responsibility for your beliefs, for your labels that you've accepted or given yourself, your time, your memories, your emotions, all of those things. And you can't move forward until you take responsibility for that. So thank you for your time. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the website for them to get in touch with you? What would be the easiest way for somebody to contact you?
Yeah, so they can reach out to Boland College Tennis Placement. It's Brian at coachboland.com. So BRIAN at coachboland.com. Shoot me an email, ask me any questions that they might have. I'm happy to give out my phone number. It's 813-365-2531. They just want to have questions, just give me a call, 813-365-2531. Always happy to help. Always look forward to making someone's day a little bit better. So feel free to reach out. It's Boland College Tennis Placement. And we started up last June, July, and things are thriving. We've got a lot of people that are working with us now, and I've got a big staff, a high-quality staff, and we continue to grow faster than I could have ever dreamed of. So it's gone really well. We're out here to serve people. We want to help families go through this very complex process and make a decision that is so important to their child.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Appreciate the time. And for all those of you out there listening, some great information. It was nice, actually, to hear from another college coach in a little different sport, but you hear the same message over and over. And, I don't know how many of you know, but 10.5 million teenagers in 2023 had reported persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. That is a dangerously high number. The causes behind that, there are several, but they can all point to one primary thing, and that's the mindset of the student. Now, we as parents will spend literally up to tens of thousands of dollars from summer camps and athletic training and test prep and being prepared for taking college testing and college itself. Yet we invest very little in the one thing that can really make or break their success, not just in high school and college athletics, but in life in general, and that is their mindset. So I would strongly encourage you to really think about that and think about how you go about doing that. And for anybody who is listening to this, I will put forth a special offer. I do an hour-long strategy session that is typically $350, and I would waive that. But to get the special link for that, you can go to CoachChuck360.com, CoachChuck360.com. There's a contact me section there. Text me your first name, last name, best email, and put podcast gift, and I will make sure we get you that link, that special link for scheduling that strategy session. So again, until our next show, I wish you all well and take care.